In terms of the stock market, the valuations in the stock markets are at their highs. There's a lot of tech companies, AI companies that have really skyrocketed. Their valuations are very high. Some people say it's justified. What are your thoughts on all that?
So two things. I'll talk about the valuations in the market. The valuations are very high in stocks overall right now. Valuation is not a timing tool. Oh, the stock market's overvalued, so therefore it has to fall. No, that's not the case. It was overvalued a year ago and it went up 17%. It was overvalued, I would argue, 2 years ago, and it was up 20% and then 17% in 2024 and 2025. But it is an expectations tool. Over the next 10 years, what should you expect the stock market to do at these high valuations? Struggle. It doesn't mean it's going to crash. It doesn't mean it's going to fall. It means it's going to give you suboptimal returns, maybe somewhere in the low single digits, thereabouts, or it will match the inflation rate. If the inflation rate, if I'm right, and the inflation rate is going to be about 3% a year, stocks will return about 3 or 4% a year over the next 10 years. Over the intermediate term, I've been using the acronym of this is the 4, 5, 6 markets. I think that cash will return you 4. I think bonds will return you 5. And I think stocks, and let me say non-AI stocks, will return you 6. Now, 6 is not that bad if we're going to have a 3% inflation. Problem is when people hear 6, no, the stock market's supposed to give me 20 every year because that's what it always does, is it goes up 20 every year. It has. But that's why we have this overvaluation on it. AI stocks is a different story. They've been running probably around 28% to 30% last year, higher, and they could continue to run, but they're very, very risky. A quick word about AI. I am a big believer in AI. I think it is the biggest thing we've seen, bigger than the internet itself, and that it is something we should be looking forward to, we should be embracing, and it will be a job creator. There's very few people that are as optimistic about AI as I am. But I also think that Silicon Valley has done a criminally bad job of explaining what AI is. Let me give you an example of why I'm so bullish on AI. In 2026, our life is digital. Everything we do in our life, whether it's entertainment, it's business, it's transportation, is all around computers networked together. Because we have such a reliance on them, it's difficult to use them. Look at the airport. All the airport is, every job at the airport is a database administrator. I go to the airport, I have to get scanned in to go through security. I have to be properly in a database. And if I am not, I go to the counter and they have to fix me in the database. Once I do that, I get my boarding pass. I have to be properly in the database in order to get a boarding pass. Otherwise, back to the counter to fix the database. We have made modern jobs soulless database operator jobs. Customer service. Everything is about our overlord is the database. Why can't I get my pay-per-view? Why isn't this work? Why don't I have my ticket? Because you're not properly in the database and we need to fix that. That's where AI will come in. AI will, when I walk into the airport, it'll scan me, facial recognition, it's already there, facial recognition. So for those of you worried about government, it's already there. It's going to say, oh, here's Jim. He must be going on a flight. Oh, good, there's a flight. I see why he's here. I don't see a flight. Well, fix it without asking me a question before I get to security. Just fix it. Figure out why I'm there and get me fixed in your database. And it will. And it'll make our life a lot easier. And we'll just go through life. Whenever I want something from my computer, I don't need to remember, go file this, edit, compatibility, check off these boxes, turn off these boxes, and then do this. None of that. Just turn on your microphone and say, hey, computer, give me this. That's what AI will do, and it will produce that output. That is what we need in modern life. Now, Silicon Valley will tell you, oh, it'll cure cancer. Yeah, I understand how it's going to cure cancer, because what does a cancer researcher do? And I'm going to be simple and kind of humorous at the same time. They look in a microscope for an hour to see what they see, and then they spend 2 weeks trying to program a computer to tell them what they just saw on the microscope. Let AI look at the microscope and program it in 4 seconds. And then they could move on to the next thing and the next thing, and they could make research go a lot faster and find a cure for cancer. That's why we need AI. But is it going to eliminate all those jobs when they look into the microscope? Are they then, there was all these people that worked with them to spend 2 weeks to make the computer simulate what they just saw on the microscope. Yes, those jobs will be eliminated, but AI will lower costs. It will open up new opportunities that don't exist now because the cost structures don't work. All technological advances throughout history have been net creators of jobs. This is going to be a net creator of jobs. Look at the dominant companies today. Who are they? They're the Mag 7, they're the AI companies. Technology is half the capitalization of the New York Stock Exchange. 30 or 40 years ago, most of those companies didn't exist. We created a tool that revolutionized the economy, changed the cost structure to make things like podcasting simple. 30 years ago, if you wanted to do this interview with me, 40 years ago, if you wanted to do this interview with me and get it out to the reach that Epoch Times has got it out to right now, you would have had to spend billions of dollars to buy NBC News. That was the only way you were getting this out. Now, as long as you pay your electricity bill, everybody can get this because everybody's connected on the internet. So it lowered the cost of information, and it's been a creator of millions of jobs associated with that. This is what AI is going to do. Now, I understand that the concern is, I see the jobs that's going to go away. These jobs that it's going to create, these are conceptual ideas that once you lower costs, there's going to be new jobs. Yes, that's scary for a lot of people. I know who's going to lose their job. I just don't know what's going to replace it. But trust me, something will, because when you lower costs, there will be something else. And the way I would argue it with what I see AI is, we've had this big rally in AI stocks, but they've been largely centered around NVIDIA and the infrastructure build out in AI. And that is what Wall Street likes to call the picks and shovels play. Chips and building out AI and data centers and large language models and all this other stuff. I'll channel my inner Jeff Bezos because he pointed it out. And he was talking about, we did the same thing in 2000, 99, 2000. It was centered around in Cisco and in JDS Uniphase and Global Crossings. And it was switches and routers and putting in the internet. And then in March of 2000, the internet infrastructure peaked and the Nasdaq fell 77%. And he said that was a good bubble. And what does he mean by good bubble? Because when it blew up, it left us the internet. So thank you to all the investors of the internet in 2000. You wrecked your financial careers so I could do stupid memes on my computer. But you left us with this enormously powerful tool called the internet. We then had a second wave of companies come. That was Uber, Facebook, Google, Twitter, that were basically, okay, now that we have this tool, what do we do with it? And that's what we got, and that's half the stock market today. So what do I see with AI? Those companies rally a little bit more, and then there's a big correction in the infrastructure companies. But it leaves us with AI. Then somewhere down the line, people start to say, we got this incredible tool. Let's build companies around this incredible tool. And I could see in 30 years or 40 years, half the stock market capitalization will be, again, companies that don't exist today, that will come from that, and they will employ tens of millions of people doing jobs that we never thought they could do. Just like 40 years ago, we never thought that people would be sitting in their underwear with a shirt on in their bedroom doing podcasts that millions of people watch every day. And we never thought that long-form podcasts would be popular, that we would have 3-hour podcasts that they would be watching. But they are, because we didn't realize that that was going to be a tool, because 40 years ago, there was no outlet for a 3-hour podcast or a 3-hour interview, because you only had 4 network stations.
The cost was so much for
the
even
costs
them.
were just prohibitive to the point no one even considered it. And because the costs were so high, that's why all the interviews are always 4 minutes long, because they're always so expensive and they got to move on to the next subject. So it will fundamentally change this and create opportunities. I embrace my AI overlord. I want him to come. I think it's going to be a good thing. I think it's going to be especially a good thing for the younger people, because they're going to be engaged in new jobs and new opportunities. But I am wary that loss of initial jobs, that creation of new jobs, might not be seamless. I'll give you one example. One of the biggest technological changes was the Industrial Revolution. But 1900, 50% of the people worked on farms. By 1950, it was 4% of the people worked on farms. Everybody left the farm to go work in industrial factories. That was not seamless. There was a pushback. The pushback was known as communism. And that was the anti-capitalist pushback. That transition can be ugly. The risk with this is the transition could be very ugly. I think a lot of people are cognizant of that and they're maybe working at
So
trying
it
to
might
make
take years for those jobs to appear, and before those jobs appear, people that lose the opportunities, they might get into something like socialism or communism. Is that what you're...
Well, yeah, maybe not socialism or communism, but some kind of a pushback against this movement. Actually, it's referred to in Silicon Valley as the decelerationist movement, where you want to slow down the growth of AI. That's really where it could come at that point.